Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Huh.
Today we're going to be taking a look at something that I think a lot of people are curious about,
Yeah,
especially as more and more people start traveling internationally again, and that is flying domestically in India.
that's right. Yeah, and we've got a great source here that goes through all of the airline procedure.
Yeah, this is a really thorough guide put out by the Indian government.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be super useful for anyone planning a trip to India or just, armchair travelers who are interested in how things work in other parts of the world.
Right.
And what really struck me as I was reading through this is the identification part.
Oh, yeah.
Like in the US, we're so used to just having our driver's license or
Yeah.
maybe a passport if we're flying.
Right.
But in India, they've got a whole other system going on with different kinds of ID cards, like
Yeah.
Aadhaar cards and PAN cards.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
So yeah, I'm really curious to dive into all of that.
Yeah, me too.
So let's start at the very beginning. What do people need to know before they even get to the airport?
Well, first things first, booking your ticket in advance is super important.
Okay, so just like anywhere else, really.
Right, especially if you're traveling during peak season.
Makes sense.
And, while you're at it, check out the baggage allowances because they can vary from airline to airline.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Nobody wants to get hit with extra fees at the airport.
No, definitely not.
Also, super useful to check if the airline offers online check-in.
Oh, that's always a time saver.
Yeah, it can make things so much smoother when you get to the airport.
All right, so we've got our tickets booked.
Hmm.
We've checked the baggage allowance. We've maybe even checked in online.
Yeah.
Now we're at the airport.
All right.
What happens next?
Well, like in many other countries, you want to make sure to arrive at the airport early.
Early being,
I would say at least 2 to 3 hours before your flight, especially if you have bags to check.
okay, so give yourself plenty of time.
Yeah, you don't want to be rushing, and then you've got to go through security and all that.
Right, right.
So once you're at the airport, you'll head to the check-in counter if you haven't already checked in online.
Okay.
And then, of course, you go through security.
Speaking of security, what's the process like in India?
It's actually pretty similar to what you'd experience in the US or Europe.
Okay, so the usual removing shoes and belts and
Exactly, yeah. Laptops out of the bag.
liquids in those little plastic bags.
Yes, exactly. The 100 milliliter rule applies.
All right, so nothing too out of the ordinary there.
Nope.
But what about the ID part? That's what I'm really curious about.
Right, so this is where things get a little different.
Okay.
So while you can definitely use your passport for domestic flights within India,
Uh-huh.
they also accept other forms of photo ID, which is really interesting.
Like what?
So they have these things called Aadhaar cards, which are basically like biometric ID cards.
Oh, wow. So it's like your fingerprint and
Exactly, yeah. It's linked to your fingerprints, your iris scan, and your demographic information.
so it's kind of like a super secure social security card.
Yeah, you could say that. And it's becoming increasingly important for various services in India, not just travel.
Interesting.
They also accept PAN cards, which are used for tax purposes, but they have your photo and other identifying information on them as well.
So there are actually multiple options for travelers.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's all about convenience and what you're most comfortable with.
That's great to know.
And they've got this whole system for dealing with unruly passengers as well.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more about that.
So they have these guidelines in place for monitoring and handling unruly passengers. And if someone is being disruptive or causing a safety concern, they can be refused boarding or even removed from the flight.
Well, that makes sense. Safety first, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about ensuring a safe and comfortable travel experience for everyone.
So to recap, we've talked about booking tickets in advance, checking baggage allowances, arriving at the airport early, going through security, and the different forms of ID that are accepted.
Yeah, we covered a lot.
Is there anything else that travelers should keep in mind?
Just remember that, like with any form of travel, it's always a good idea to just be aware of your surroundings and be respectful of local customs and, pay attention to the instructions given by airport staff and security personnel.
That's good advice for traveling anywhere, really.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into flying domestically in India.
Yeah, it's a whole different system, but it seems to work quite well.
And it makes you think about how things might change in other parts of the world as technology advances.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, who knows what the future of air travel holds, right? Maybe we'll all be using biometric IDs and zipping through security in no time.
That would be pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But for now, if you're planning a trip to India, make sure you do your research and be prepared for a unique and exciting travel experience. And for those of you listening at home, think about the systems in your own country and how they might be evolving as well.
It's always good to stay informed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Indian aviation.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration of something new.
Sounds good.
Bye, everyone.